Is the One Ring the new and improved Ad Naus? Does it change the way we build 4-color piles? If we're not on Ad Naus, how do we go fast? I'm Cyrus, this is Mental Misplay, and today we're going to be looking at those questions and more, so let's get into it. So is the One Ring a better Ad Naus than Ad Naus? I don't think that is necessarily the case, but I also think that it might not even be the right way to look at it. First, let's look at Ad Naus. Ad nauseam represents an I win button. A card that, once resolved, typically wins you the game. But is that even the case these days? So often lately, I've seen one of two things. An Ad Naus that basically puts a player out of the game by drawing them all of their 3 and 4 drops and putting them in killing range of other players, and players casting Desperation Ad Naus while they're already at 20 or less life. The effectiveness of the Ad Nauseam strategy, especially outside of dedicated decks like Rogsai, has really taken a hit recently, at least in my opinion. I've often found myself asking if Ad Naus was even a good card to be running in a deck that is skewing further and further towards a mid-range plan like Tymna Kraum, aka Blue Farm, which most of this video will be based on. The One Ring, on the other hand, represents something like a souped-up heuristic study, another one of the best cards we can be running in CEDH, except it dodges destroy effects, is easier to cast off cards like Mana Vault, gives you a whole turn cycle to not worry about taking damage, and perhaps best of all, does not rely on your opponents to give you the cards. Ad Nauseam is actually a fairly versatile card, so we want to make sure that we can still do all the things that it was doing for us, but perhaps better. I mentioned the Desperation Ad Naus earlier, the one you cast at 20-ish life, hoping that you hit the right combination of rocks and rituals to hobble together a win. Is there another card we could be running that is better at being a Desperation Naus and also represents another function of Ad Naus, the I win function? For this, we have Peer into the Abyss. Yes, it costs more, it's sorcery speed, and it has dangerous interactions with highly played staples, but it is important to note that I am not thinking of Peer into the Abyss as a replacement for the Turbo Win functionality of Ad Naus, but I like having it in my deck as a final failsafe. I am never attempting to rush out an early Peer. I want to see Swats and Bowmasters in graveyards before I even think about casting this spell. But if I am down and out, and on what is probably the last turn cycle of the game, I would rather slam a Peer than an Ad Naus at 17 life every day, all day. A moment ago, I mentioned that Turbo Win functionality of Ad Naus, and you may be wondering what card can be used to achieve that greatness, and how many cards are going to have to shoehorn into our deck just to patch up the loss of a single card. Well, luckily, most Ad Naus decks are already running a card that I think is possibly better at turbo winning than Ad Naus. It's just a little less obvious and seems to be shied away from by newer players that I talk to. That card, as you may have guessed, is Intuition. By no means a new card, not even in CEDH, where it's been showing up in lists for years, but I still think of Intuition as somewhat of a sleeper hit because many people don't seem to grasp just how good it is. These days, if I'm going to use a tutor to get an I win card, I want Intuition over Ad Naus every single time. It works just as well as Ad Naus at setting up a win attempt in an opponent's end step, while not costing you a ton of life and potentially not hitting the cards you need to actually win. Pivoting to a Turbo Intuition plan is as easy as removing Ad Naus and knowing the lines, and it costs absolutely nothing in terms of deck space. The Peer into the Abyss plan is optional, but no longer comes with the usual risk of hitting a 7-drop off Ad Naus, and the One Ring is like a better heuristic study that can pull as much weight as Naus as you get into the mid and late game. Does that all mean that the One Ring is better than Ad Naus? Who knows, but I think it's worth at least theory crafting and testing, and at least opens up the possibility of cutting Ad Nauseam, which I think was objectively wrong until the printing of the One Ring. If you're not subscribed, please hit subscribe. If you like this kind of theory crafting video or want to see more of my face on the channel, give this video a like, or leave us a comment, or just tell me that I'm overthinking it and I need to just run Ad Naus like a real CEDH player. You can follow me personally on Twitter or Instagram or Threads by following the links below, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.